Okay. I'm getting the hang of the lightness is not familiar to my fingers. I haven't typed on this light of a keyboard since I used a Cherry MX Brown board, and even those I almost want to say were stiffer. These dragon fruits are freaking light, man. It's pretty nice. The stacked acrylic thing, you know, I'm a little medium on it. You know, it's just not a particularly firm, stiff assembly. But it does have a nice signature sound to it. You definitely, literally, a desk pad is like required for using one of these. Let me fix that real quick there. It's not the final resting keycaps for this one. I will definitely be upgrading this to something else, unless I sell it, which is a possibility. The port's kind of nice. It's got a nice wide cutout for it. I mean, for the price, I mean, this is a premium feeling keyboard. I think the whole kit was under 80 bucks. I'll use it for a little while, see how I end up liking the switches. I can say the dragon fruits, they're like they remind me of cherry ergo clears, actually. I think the most. I used a board that had cherry ergo. That was my first modded keyboard, was cherry ergo clears. I used that for a while. And these remind me of those quite a bit. Even lighter, I would say, than the ones I was using. I think I used a 68-gram spring in the cherries, in the modded cherry clears that I built. And I think this uses like a 62. This feels lighter than Browns. They feel like 58-gram springs. Honestly, I think they're supposed to be like 62 grams, but they just feel so light. They feel very light. I'm not used to that. I'm used to really heavy keys. I've been using my cyberboard, which has Moyu Blacks in it, which feel like freaking 80 grams. I swear, they're really stiff. They have a really intense tactile bump as well, so that like interruption, it's just really, they're really intense. These are not intense. They're sharp, but they're light, which in my opinion is a bad combination. It makes the switch feel rattly and scratchy, even if it's not. It doesn't feel smooth, even if it's lubed. And these are pretty heavily lubed. That said, I didn't have to film them, and they still sound pretty good. Unlike most of the other JWK switches. Those are especially rattly, and you have to film them. These C3 equals housings must just have tighter tolerances because they don't have any housing wobble really. Wonder if I can pick that up on the camera. Let me just even inspect it myself. It's probably not going to show on the camera. But I just kind of grab the top housing here. Yeah, that doesn't budge. Even in this loose plate. Okay, like I can make it move, but it takes a lot of force. Whereas with the T1s that I've been using, like if you grab the housing and move it like that, the thing just moves. You can see it visually, like back and forth. So these are definitely an improved version of, you know, they're better than the standard Duroc housings. But the stems, kind of, I would say, I should have tried swapping stems in these housings. I bet you I bet you the T1 stems in these housings would be really nice if the tolerances allowed it. Or honestly, maybe a panda stem could work. Maybe you could turn these into some kind of funky panda. Or halo, you know, the halo stem rather. They're better than Cherry MX Browns. That I can say with confidence. The bump is just a little too sharp for me. There's a little bit of pre-travel, and then you can feel the shelf. Let me see if you can see that. You can probably pick it up, infer it from the key press here. There's your little pre-travel. And it snaps. And then there's some post-travel as well. Very noticeable linear post-travel right at the bottom there. That's like straight spongy linearness. But like up here, I think what I find with tactile switches is it actually feels better to have a more tactile upstroke than a downstroke. You almost want a linear downstroke with a tactile upstroke, because the upstroke is what tells your fingers that the key has been reset and you're ready to press the key again. So I actually find that I prefer like the bump of a long and drawn out bump of like a Holy Panda type switch tends to, I think it just enhances my overall typing experience and even gaming, just from the fact that the bump starts so abruptly at the top of the stroke that you almost don't even feel it on the way down, but when you release, you very much so feel the bump. At least that's how I experience the Holy Panda switches. It's an especially noticeable return force. And with these, it's more like you get stuck like halfway up. It's less of an event and more of a stickiness. Crunchy. It's not the crunchiness feel. The crunchy feel I would attribute to box royal switches or box jades. I also feel that crunchiness applies to those Moyu blacks. Those things are just crunchy. They're so tactile. It happens when the leaf is really, really tactile. And the leaves in these is very tactile. On top of the fact that the bump on the stem, I think, is just sharp. But they're pretty smooth, despite that sharpness. And all my lubing, of course, I put in there. And they sounded pretty good on the mat. I think I'm gonna test it on my own desk over there, but that's my review on the Dragon Fruit switches so far. I'd give them like a 6 out of 10. Probably. I think I prefer T1s, but the T1s are more work. Because these really didn't need the films. I don't think these need films to be good. Whereas T1s absolutely need films. I don't know how, I bet you, I'm curious about the Kiwis now, because if the Kiwis use the same kind of housing design, I have to imagine the Kiwis are like a nice stock switch to recommend to people. And these were not good stock. They were quite bad. They needed lube to dampen out that sharpness. They were too sharp. And fortunately, they take lube really well. Unlike the Everglide Crystal Violets, which were awful. I had to spring swap them to make them lubable, because otherwise the return spring force was not strong enough to push through the lube. Yeah, alright, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks everybody for watching. Cheers, have a good night, happy Tuesday. Stay warm, don't freeze. Cheers.